feared and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eagle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the PTBNL, the podcast to be named later, talking Phillies baseball here on the Always Next Year podcast network. I'm your host, Rob, joined tonight by Sean. How's it going, Sean?
Pretty good. Pretty excited to talk about some potential MLB shakeups this season if it actually happens.
Yeah, something really interesting going on there. Definitely looking to get into that. And we're also joined tonight by Joe Borek. Borek, how's it going?
Very good, guys. I hope everyone's staying well and healthy through all this and staying positive, but doing well here.
We're happy to have you back on the show, man.
Yeah, very happy to be back on, too. I definitely have more free time now with projects being more spaced out now on my online stuff. So
there you go. All right, well, before we get into things here, I just want to let you know where you can find us. You can find the PTBNL on Twitter at ANYP Phillies. You can find the Always Next Year Podcast Network at ANY Podcast. You can find me at radio_Rob. Borek, where can we find you?
At JJ Borek 26.
And Sean?
At Sean New 27, SEANNEW 27.
And of course, you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud. If you find us on Apple Podcasts, please give us a rating, give us a review. We definitely use all of that to kind of build our podcast and kind of cater towards what the listeners want to hear. We recently had a nice little batch of reviews come in that we reviewed as a team, and we're going to make changes accordingly. So keep those reviews coming in. They're hugely important to us, and they really kind of fuel our fire here. Anyway, we've got a few things to talk about, and you mentioned it, Sean, as you were being introduced. The division changes, or the new division alignments, as temporary as they may be, some interesting ones that we've got going on there. And why don't you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so basically Bob Nightingale came out with an article the other day, and it basically stated how the MLB can play this season and how the divisions can be realigned so that all 30 teams can be split 15 in each of Florida and Arizona, and how they can play in the city that they play spring training at. And in this case, you wouldn't have the traditional, NL East, NL Central divisions because, spacing in Florida between the towns that they play spring training in, it would not help travel. You would have somebody going from northern Florida to southern Florida, which is, a 4 to 5 hour bus ride. I just assume. I'm not exactly positive. But basically, it completely realigned how the divisions would look, and it made it so that, for the sake of traveling to closer teams, it just made it easier. And I was all for this. I was somebody that when the Golden Knights got introduced to hockey, and I know you know a lot about this, Rob, I wasn't really big into hockey at that point, but when it started to become introduced that they were going to do this expansion draft, I was all about it. And I looked at, every team, who they were protecting, who the Golden Knights were going to get. Just the idea of making changes in the major sports in a season, as special as the one that we're going to see, it's something that I really get into. So I really wanted to take control of this topic, and I wanted to get your guys' impressions on a couple things.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to the whole Golden Knights thing. I kind of adopted them as my second NHL team behind the Flyers. But, yeah, it's really interesting to see how things play out over the course of expansion drafts and things like that. And we're actually going to see that again in the NHL in a couple of years with the Seattle team coming in. So it'll be interesting to see there, and it'll be interesting to see how this whole division thing plays out in baseball too.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it, and I'm already preparing for the Dragons draft. I'm going to be way more prepared for it than I was with the Golden Knights. And I'm also excited to see it happen in baseball, but that's a conversation for a couple years from now. But anyway, the main talking point that we're going to focus on is the Phillies' potential division, which will be known as the Grapefruit North League. It has the Phillies, Yankees, Blue Jays, Tigers, and Pirates. So just off those teams, I want to get a first impression from you guys. So, Borek, what is your first impression of this Phillies division?
Well, as I said, as we were coming into the Open, it's kind of we have the Yankees in our division and then everybody else. The Blue Jays have a very good young crop of players, but I don't think they have the pitching to hold up now that we added Zach Wheeler even to us, even with Ryu, because Ryu just had his first durable year that he really performed last year. So I need to see more from him on that. And then the Pirates are just a contact hitting team with no pitching. And then the Tigers are the Tigers. There's not really to say about it. So.
Right. I completely agree. I have, in this division at least, the Yankees they're the headliner. This division, you even said you had the divisions. There was an article of the divisions being ranked. And I'm guessing this one was towards the bottom because nobody sees the Phillies as highly as we do. But, Rob, what is your impression of this division?
Sorry to cut you off. I was going to say this one was fifth. Yeah.
Fifth? Yeah, I completely believe it. Rob, what did you think of this division?
It's really unique. I mean, obviously the Yankees are going to be the favorite. They're one of the favorites to win the World Series this year. They're a very, very good baseball team. They're obviously the favorite to win this division. But there's a lot of really unique things about it. I want to bring up the Pirates matchup, and that's a huge thing to me because I don't know how many younger Phillies fans know this, but back in the day, I think it was sometime around the early 90s when the MLB split up into the current three-division alignment that they have. Before that, the Phillies and the Pirates were actually in the same division, and they were huge rivals. And that includes, Mike Schmidt. I was going to say Michael Jack Schmidt. Mike Schmidt hitting his 500th home run, that big moment out in Pittsburgh, and a number of other hallmark moments between the Phillies and the Pirates. That was a huge rivalry back before they put the Pirates in the Central Division. So it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out with those two teams in the same division again. And also Toronto, they're so intriguing with all the sons of former Major League players that they have. Obviously, Vlad Guerrero Jr., the big name there. Bo Bichette, they got Kevin Biggio. They've got some really good young talent on that team. They're probably not going to be sniffing the playoffs this year, but in the next few years, they're going to be a really good team, and it'll be interesting to compete against them this year. And then, obviously, as Borek said, the Tigers are the Tigers.
Well, Toronto team, I'm pumped to watch too more. If they're in our division, they're just a fun team, like Rob was saying, that are young and exciting and vibrant to watch. And I think there'll be a competitive, scrappy team, but I think it's going to be us and the Yankees, and then everybody below. So
that's what I would assume too. That's how I see it. At least I see the Yankees just completely pounding them or everybody in the division, and I see them having, if not, the Dodgers or any other league. I see the Yankees having the best record in the MLB this season if it actually happens like this, if the division becomes like this. And what you said about the Blue Jays too, I completely agree. I love all those young kids. They're just a likable team, and I see them becoming what the Astros and what the Cubs are now, like without the cheating. But they had a young core and they had all these prospects and they all came up and they all started performing, and after, the first couple years together, all of a sudden they're making these deep playoff drives, and then both ended up winning the championship. And that's exactly how I see the Blue Jays now. I think they just need to add a couple pieces, and, they could be a contender within a couple years. But anyway, other than the Yankees, and, we did touch on this already, the biggest threat in this division, another question I had, obviously you both assume the Blue Jays, right?
I would say Toronto, yes, just because of that enormous amount of young talent that they have. And Vlad Jr., he's going to be an MVP candidate for years to come. That kid is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Completely agree. What about you, Jeff?
I would say it's also the Blue Jays because we didn't even see the full effect of guys like Biggio. They didn't play as much as guys like Bichette, who came on like a firecracker. So you also still got Gordiel and all those guys, and Teoscar Hernandez, who can hit home runs if he can finally get his average up. So you got some guys that can really help pull your team together even better too on that team. So I would say it's the Blue Jays.
I'll tell you what, if they didn't trade Stroman last year, we might be talking about them being a playoff contender this year.
I completely agree. I think that was a very underrated move, and I think they sold a little too quickly because then you started bringing up all the prospects, and they started to perform. But anyway, this is a question not so much about the division, but about the new potential, how it's set up. Are you guys upset about how they're breaking traditional rivalries? Like the Phillies aren't going to be playing the Mets, Braves, and Nats as much this year. And especially like with that, the Phillies and Mets have had a rivalry for a long time now. Are you guys upset that they're breaking that traditional rivalry like value? What do you guys think?
No, I'm not, just because it's a temporary thing. This isn't once things get back to normal for the 2021 season, they're going to go right back to what the divisions were. So I'm okay with them breaking it just for this one abbreviated season. And I actually appreciate the fact that we get to play the Yankees a lot, that we get to play the Pirates a lot, and get to see some different matchups as opposed to playing the freaking Nationals and the Mets and the Marlins 18 times a year. I mean, thank God we don't have to play the Marlins because they kicked our ass last year.
Yeah, I think it's a cool, refreshing thing to have it for 1 year. I wouldn't like it, obviously, if it went on, but like Rob said, it's just going to be for 1 year, so I'm perfectly content and fine with the way they're doing it this year.
Perfect. I completely agree. I'm not afraid of saying that I won't miss the Braves or the Mets playing in Citizens Bank Park. It wouldn't be in Citizens Bank Park, but I'm glad I wouldn't have to watch them play.
Whoever the hell it is, yeah.
Yeah. I agree. It will be really refreshing. So real quick, before we move on, I want to kind of touch on all the other divisions and what you guys think and who you think will win. So the Grapefruit League South has the Red Sox, Twins, Braves, Rays, and Orioles. What are your thoughts on this division?
That's probably the most competitive division. The Red Sox aren't what they were a couple of years ago, and the whole Alex Cora thing that kind of screws them up. Still a very competitive team. The Twins were a playoff team last year. The Braves were a playoff team last year. And the Rays were a playoff team last year. And then you have the Orioles, who, as bad as they were last year, they do have some good young talent. They're probably not going to be very good, but they have some players you can keep an eye on as well.
Who on the Orioles do you consider this young talent? Trey Mancini? Other than him and John Means?
I wouldn't even consider Mancini one of those guys. Rio Ruiz is a guy who caught my eye. Right. I didn't really watch them a whole lot last year, but when I did, he was a guy who kind of caught my eye a little bit as somebody who has some potential for the future.
All right, I can see it. It's definitely not, they're not going to click this year, but they do have some young talent, and I can't wait to see Adley Rutschman if he makes his debut, which probably won't be this year, but he's knocking on the door. Joe,
Renato.
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, Renato Nunez, another guy, hit 31 homers last year. He's a guy he's 26, so he's a little bit older than most prospects are, but still a pretty decent player.
Right. They have some pop. I'm not going to lie. You're right. Go ahead, Joe. What do you think?
I would say that division, it's close. In the article I read, they had the biggest loser as the Twins, but because the Braves have so much youngsters mixed in with veterans, I think it could potentially be the Braves, because if the Twins mash like they did last year, and Barrios keeps pitching well, and they get those other youngsters they have in the rotation to keep pitching well, I think it would be more the Rays and Twins battling it out at the top, with probably the Braves third, and then maybe tied with Boston. But I would see those two being at the top.
Right. Yeah, I have this one. I just wrote next to this division fun because, I love the Rays. The Rays are a fun team to watch. They're young and they're just likable. The Twins, who hit the most home runs in the majors last year, and even the Braves, who I'll be glad to not see them in this division. I could actually enjoy watching them for once. Everything about this division, it's going to be, in my opinion, like outside of the Phillies division, this will be the division I probably watch the closest.
I agree. The Twins also added more power in Donaldson. I forgot to bring that up.
Oh, I completely forgot about that. Yeah. And putting him in a division against the Braves when they thought he was leaving, that's kind of interesting.
That's also an interesting storyline, yeah.
So the next division is the Grapefruit League East, which is actually just the NL East if you swap out the Braves and the Phillies for the Astros and the Cardinals. So you have the Nationals, Mets, Marlins, Astros, and Cardinals. What do you guys think of this?
Get a World Series matchup in that division.
That's very true. Nationals and Astros.
Yep. Other than that, it'll be a fun division. Obviously, Nationals, Astros are good teams. The Cardinals are a good team. The Mets are a good team. Once again, that's 4 good teams and 1 bad team. The bad team, of course, being the Marlins.
Right.
So it'll be a fun division to watch. But I dislike 3 out of the 5 teams in it, so I won't be watching it too much.
I dislike 4 of those teams. So I have written in here that I think the Cardinals are going to come out winning that division just because I think the Astros take a huge step back. But what do you think, Bork?
The Cardinals are always one of those surprising teams that when they just come up and have the year, especially when they're counting them down, because I think Pacoda before the season then had them at like 81 and like about 500, so they were kind of counted out a little bit. So I could see that a little bit, but also I could see the Nats pushing. The thing that concerns me about them, though, which might make me lean towards the Cardinals, like you said, is they never get off to great starts. So if we're having a shortened season, I don't think that benefits the Nationals one iota, where the Astros are probably not going to benefit them either because they got to get over all this crap. So that's probably why it would be the Cardinals, but just by default, too.
That's another thing I was thinking about this division, even if it was the regular division. I think the Astros are going to take a huge step back this year. I think not just because of the cheating, but because of all the extracurricular stuff going on outside of the baseball world that they have to deal with. They have to deal with the booing and, just constant scrutiny from the media. But yeah, I think other than the Astros, I think it's going to be a battle between the Nationals and the Cardinals. And I think if this actually were to happen, I think the Cardinals take that. It's, another bloodbath that they thought the NL East would be this season.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I think losing Rendon is a big loss for the Nationals, too.
I think it's an extremely underrated thing. Like when I see before all this stuff started going down and I started seeing the projections for the season, like just the regular season, I saw most people thought that the Nationals or the Braves would win, but the Nationals would be a close second. And I think they're just thinking, because they're biased that they just won the World Series. I think losing Rendon, that's their, right in the middle of their lineup. That's their centerpiece last year. And I think that's going to hit them a lot harder this year.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
100%. Carter Keeper needs to step up for them big time if they're not going to take a hit from that.
Completely agree. Moving out to Arizona for the Cactus League, we have the Cactus Northeast, which is the Cubs, Giants, Diamondbacks, and Rockies and Athletics. What do you guys think of this division?
Borek, I'll let you start off with this one.
Yeah, this one's a very interesting division because it has a lot of teams that were teetering last year. Where I might lean towards the A's, honestly, just because they were the most consistent team of all those teams last year, and they really didn't fall at all. And they have Motis coming back from his suspension and all his other issues. But so they should have a complete team there. I would lean towards them in that division because the Cubs is going to be interesting what they do with the new staff coming in and everything, with David Ross and everybody, and seeing how they adjust to him being a former player now as a manager. So I would lean towards the A's, with the Cubs being the competitive team behind them, and then probably the D-backs.
Interesting. All right, Rob?
Borek, I'm going to have to agree with the A's being at the top. They have the most proven talent, and honestly, they should have gone further last year than they did. They were upset in the wild card round by Tampa. Where I'm going to have to disagree is I'm going to flip the Cubs and the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks are kind of a underrated team, if you will, and they always kind of have been. They kind of flown under the radar a little bit just because they don't really make noise in October, but we saw the Cubs start to trend backwards over the past couple of years, and they missed the postseason last year, and they looked really bad down the stretch. Some of their core players are getting a little bit older. Anthony Rizzo's getting a little bit older. They're kind of unsure about the future of Chris Bryant there, whether he's going to remain with the Cubs or if he's going to move on elsewhere. So that's going to be a big thing. That's why I see the Diamondbacks finishing ahead of them. Another team there that's intriguing, although I don't think they're going to do a whole lot of damage, is the Colorado Rockies. They always have great hitters. They never have the pitching. Nolan Arenado, he's the best third baseman in baseball right now. Trevor Story, one of my favorite players in baseball. Those guys can rake, but they cannot pitch, and that's why they will not be successful. But to recap, yes, Oakland should be the best team in the division. I think Arizona is going to be hot on their tail.
I actually couldn't agree more with everything you just said. When I first wrote out this division, I looked at it, I was like, this division's not good. Like, from top to bottom, it's teams that weren't even close to the playoffs last year. And then I really started to look at it, and I was like, this is probably, if it were to happen, going to be the most fun division to watch because, in my opinion, I think the Diamondbacks, picking up Starling Marte and their young pitching coming up, I think the Diamondbacks are the most talented team in this division. I think the A's are right behind them. And being able to watch the Rockies play all of their home games outside of Coors, I think is going to take it's going to affect the hitters a lot more than I think we expect. And then you got the Cubs and the Giants, who are, in my opinion, they're the wild cards of this division. They both could have good years. I mean, who knows how the Giants are going to react? They have a kind of a young core with Gabe Kapler. But the Cubs, I mean, they won a World Series a couple years ago. They've been to the playoffs a handful of times since then, and I completely agree that they've regressed. But they're still right there. They still have all those pieces. They're fighting for they want to impress. They have those old guys that want to prove that they still have something left, and I think Ross coming in as manager might actually make a difference there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how David Ross, because we've seen players, former players, have success as they've become managers. Although two of them were involved in the scandals, those being Alex Cora and AJ Hinch, and Beltran, yes. Who could forget about Beltran? but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how David Ross has that impact. We have a former catcher managing us now in Philly, and now they've got the former catcher managing them out in Chicago now. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. I think if this were to happen, that would be the one I'd watch pretty closely because that whole division, like it's all wild cards. It's all second and third place teams that are right on the cusp of impressing.
One player who I think could surprise some people, who kind of was under the radar but quietly had a very nice rookie season, Mike Yastrzemski from the Giants.
Yeah.
He came out of nowhere. People only knew him because of his grandfather, but really had a strong rookie campaign last year. So it'll be interesting to see how he progresses.
I actually love that dude, so I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah, that dude's a very late bloomer. Baseball's seeing a lot of those nice late bloomer players recently too in the league, so it's nice to see somebody like him from a lineage family come into the league as well.
Completely agree. I'm waiting for the Phillies to pick up on one of these guys. I've yet to see it, but
100%. Yeah. Another thing I'm thinking of though, if we're realigning the divisions, are we axing the DH for a season, or are we keeping the DH through all of baseball like they do in spring training?
They've
I think it's
announced,
going to be universal.
Yeah, if they were to do this just because of the mix of American League teams with National League teams, they're going to do a universal DH.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know what they were doing with that. I didn't see anything on that.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't exactly touch on it in the article, but that was the assumption. This is building off of, I think, the Passan article, which we talked about on the last podcast, which talked about all of them playing in Arizona.
Yeah.
But yeah, so moving on to the Cactus League West, you got the Dodgers, the White Sox, the Reds, the Indians, and the Angels. What do we think of that one?
This division quietly is loaded. The Dodgers are obviously a very good team. The Angels got a lot better by bringing in Rendon to complement the best player in baseball, Mike Trout. The Indians have been a very competitive team over the course of the past few years. And the Reds and White Sox both are younger teams that have a lot of up-and-coming talent. In fact, a lot of people back before this whole quarantine and coronavirus thing happened projected the Reds to potentially even win the NL Central this year. So that's going to be a really intriguing division. If I had to pick a team, I'm going to surprise some people. I'm actually going to go with the LA Angels. I think that duo of Trout and Rendon is just going to be too dynamic, and they're going to end up winning that division.
I kind of agree. I think the Dodgers are too talented, and picking up Mookie is just, over the top. You think they can't get any better, and then they pull off a trade for a former MVP. But I think one of my favorite parts about this division is the potential LA rivalry between the Dodgers and the Angels. It's something, like how we see, New York teams kind of in basketball, the two New York teams and two LA teams have big rivalries because they're in the same division and they play in the same city. And I think that's an underrated part about this division. What do you think, Borek?
How about that Ohio rivalry?
Yeah,
too?
That's what I was about to say. Yeah, I think another rivalry that's going to be interesting in this division is Reds Indians. because you got the Battle of Ohio, and I agree with Rob though. I think the Indians might be the team. I mean, they have young talent and guys that we haven't seen all of yet, so they might be all right. But they did lose some people, where all these other teams added. They might be the team that, if they don't get going early, could be actually hurt the most from being in this competitive of a division. Where the Angels, the only thing that concerns me about them is Griffin Canning has to stay healthy throughout the whole season, in my opinion, with Andrew Heaney, and he has to have a good season in order for them to probably compete pitching-wise as well with their offense. Otherwise, they're going to have to turn into the Twins and literally hit their way to get to the top of the division if they don't get him healthy and have the pitching there. That's the only thing that concerns me about them. That's why I would say the Dodgers would probably just be too talented to take the top of that division, where the Angels I could see getting a wild card maybe, depending how that works with this league. So,
Right. What were you saying, Rob?
I wasn't saying anything.
Okay. I agree. I think Angels definitely need pitching help. And, they tried, they reached out, they were in on a lot of these big pitchers and didn't get anybody. And I think that's one thing that'll end up hurting them. But I do think that their bats are strong enough to kind of carry them, especially with adding Rendon. So moving on to the Cactus League Northwest, we have the last league that we're going to talk about. We have the Brewers, the Padres, the Mariners, the Rangers, and the Royals. And I wrote next to this one, snooze. So what do you guys think?
Borek, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, well, that's probably the best way to put it, because this is a division of a bunch of people before the season. All their highest projections were, I believe, 79 wins. So, I mean, obviously you're not in the best watched division there. So this might be the battle of the bottom feeders and seeing who comes out at the top of that type of division and then probably gets smoked in the playoffs, except for potentially the Brewers and Padres, just because they have star talent on their teams. They might find a good series. But other than them, you're going to need a lot to go right with those other teams. The Rangers maybe because of the Kluber addition, but I would say the Brewers and Padres are the only teams that have a chance of doing anything in that division.
I don't think Kluber's by himself is enough to lift the Rangers anywhere close to the playoffs, personally. But, I mean, they do have some good talent. What do you think, Rob?
Man, I'm going to have to agree with Borek that this is probably the worst division out there. It seems like Milwaukee's always a good team, but they're always afraid to spend that extra dollar to go from being a good team to being a great team. And that's, I guess, part of the territory of being a small market team. You do have Christian Yelich, who's one of the best players in baseball. And given the lack of talent relatively in this division, I think that's going to be enough for them to win this division. I think they could get some competition from the Padres because they have some good young talent there. Fernando Tatis Jr. is probably the best young prospect in baseball. So that'll be kind of fun to watch to see how the Padres do this year. I'd say the biggest loser here is the Texas Rangers not being able to open their beautiful new ballpark this season because they'll be forced to play in Arizona.
That's very. I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
It's a great point, yeah.
But I agree. I think the Brewers mop up this division semi-easily. And I think the Padres, while they have Manny and they have Fernando Tatis, and they're bringing up all their young pitchers, I still think they're a year or two away from really contending. But I think in terms of the biggest winner, it's them because they don't have to face the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, or even the Rockies. So I think that's a major perk for them if the divisions were to be realigned like this. But
yeah,
yes, that's all I have. Sorry, go ahead.
I was say that certainly works out well for them, getting out of that tough NL West and into a much weaker Cactus League Northwest.
Yeah, well, they put that loser as nobody in the article I read for that division just because of how average at best, just to not insult all the teams, that division is. They didn't even put anybody as a biggest loser.
Oh, man. All right, well, while we're talking about this Cactus League and Grapefruit League potential realignment, there's another potential scenario that has been proposed, and that's Major League Baseball playing games in Japan. And this is reported by Tim Kirkjian of ESPN. He had a source that told him a few weeks ago, quote unquote, we're going to play in Japan. Now, that's looking less and less likely as this two-division or two-league proposal for Arizona and Florida kind of picks up steam. But the proposal for playing in Japan would have been that they would have shared stadiums with the Japanese league teams, and the major league teams would have played during the day while the Japanese league teams would have played at night. And guys, and Sean, we'll start with you. How would you have felt about this, or how do you feel about this if it does indeed come to fruition?
So I would kind of have the same reaction I talked about from the last podcast, where if the guys want to go, I just want to watch baseball. And if they have to change the rules, like what Scott was proposing in the last one, if they have to change the rules or, change the divisions or whatever they have to do, move everybody down to Arizona, I don't care. I want to watch baseball. And I think in terms of, if the players would actually want to, it's no different moving just straight to Arizona for the season than it is to moving to Japan. It's a longer flight, but, most players aren't going to be, as close to home either way. So it's a matter of if the players want to go and if they want to be that far away from their families for an elongated period of time.
Yeah, and one notable thing here is that if they did end up playing in Japan, they would keep the division and league alignments the same as they have been, as opposed to changing them up like they did for the Grapefruit and the Cactus League. So that's one thing, and a lot of people seem to think that this Japan idea is kind of ridiculous. One of the reasons being what you just said, the distance away from their families that they would be all the way in a different continent as opposed to just, a few states away. So that's certainly something that kind of flies in the face of playing Major League Baseball over in Japan. Borek, what's your thought on this?
I mean, I want to watch baseball, it being my favorite sport, which I think Robin was, even though hockey's a close second, but I don't like this idea at all because I don't think it's the same going, like Sean said, going to Arizona and Florida per se, just because going to Japan, if everything's open around there, you have to get, even if you're going to be able to, you're still in a different culture, completely different culture at that point too, while trying to play in a completely different setting than what you're not used to. So I think that might affect people more than we actually think of. And also the other aspect is, I think you texted this in the group, Rob, but I think you were talking about the symmetrical stadiums and how our stadiums are all cool. And now, even if we don't get to use them, but even some minor league stadiums are pretty cool because that's what we'll probably use some in Arizona and so forth. They're not all symmetrical in the same exact thing. I like having the triples alley. I like having the big walls, and not just Fenway, but a lot of other stadiums now in the deep parts of Comerica where you can't hit crap if you hit it to center field, unless if you're freaking Paul Bunyan. So, I like those different aspects where playing in Japan, it just wouldn't be the same for me. I would much prefer the Arizona, Florida thing we talked about before because it would just seem a little bit more, even though it's a different division, just playing here would seem a lot more natural to me.
Yeah, a lot of those stadiums in Japan, not only are they symmetrical, but they're all launching pads too. The home run totals are, at least from what I've seen, kind of through the roof over there. So I wouldn't really like that aspect of like you said, I'm a big proponent of playing in the unique baseball stadiums that we have here in the United States with different dimensions, different wall heights. Some of them are pitchers' parks, some of them are hitters' parks. It kind of adds a little bit of intrigue to the game as opposed to just playing in these neutral or every single park being a hitter's park and completely symmetrical over in Japan. Real quick, I had a question for you guys. If they go forth with the season in Arizona and in Florida, do you think the teams would play with their regular uniforms, or do you think that they would play with their spring training uniforms?
That's interesting, actually.
Honestly, I'd say there's no reason not to wear, their regular ones, unless there's a reason behind it. Are the spring training uniforms more ventilated? Is that just because they're in hotter weather? Or
honestly, I have no clue. It was just a thought that I kind of had come to me, but
I honestly have no idea. I think they would wear the regular uniforms because it's the regular season, but
yeah.
maybe they would use them all since it's a special occasion. Like they would make the spring an alternative in some occasions rather than using just the regular alternative jerseys or alternate jerseys at that time.
Maybe. That might be the case. All right, so the reason I bring this up is because our bracket aficionado, Andrew, has a uniform bracket going on. We're currently in the second round right now. We've got the NL matchups, which are the Padres versus the Cubs, the Rockies versus the Nationals slash Expos, because we're going with old school uniforms as well. We've got the Brewers and the Cardinals, and we've got the Phillies and the Dodgers. And in the American League side, we've got the Yankees taking on the Twins. We've got the Rays and the Angels, the Athletics and the Mariners, and the Royals and the Astros. So we'll start with the National League, the Padres versus the Cubs. And Borek, we'll start with you. Who are you taking in that matchup?
That one, because we commented when I said before on the Padres, I kind of like their old school, but the Cubs are a little historic, which might make me lean towards the Cubs a little bit. And I do like, I always like the blue jerseys, and I even like the Cubs blue jerseys, the one with the bear in it, and then the other one a little bit too, that I would go with the Cubs on that by a very close margin.
All right, so it's one vote for the Cubs.
For me, and I brought this up on the last podcast, I really like the Padres, and I even voted against the Cubs in the first round, so I'm going to have to keep this consistent. I chose the Padres because I just love their old school brown and yellow, and I think it really popped for them. And so I think it just, to me, edges out the Cubs' classic look.
I'm going to have to go with the Cubs in this one. I love that classic look. I don't like the Cubs at all. In fact, I kind of really dislike them, but I'm always a big fan of pinstripes. And the three teams that pull it off really well, the Phillies, the Yankees, and the Cubs. So I'm going to have to make it 2-1. Of course, we still have the remaining 4 votes for the 4 other members of our podcast who will be producing a show a few nights from now. But for now, the Cubs take a 2-1 lead. And we'll move on to the Rockies and the Nationals / Expos. And Sean, we'll start with you this time.
So this one really made me think because I really stood up for both of these two. And I really love, there was an alternate jersey that I talked about that I saw Larry Walker wearing in just a quick Google image. And I talked about this on the last one. The jersey's so clean. It has the Rocky Mountains on the bottom, and it looks so nice. But I'm a huge defender of the Expos, and I love their color scheme, so I'm going to have to go with them / the Nationals.
All right, so that's a vote for the Nationals / Expos. Borek, where are you going with this one?
This one was also close for me because I love how the Rockies use a purple and black color scheme that's just not really used often and use it very well and effectively. But the powder blue old school Expos are awesome. The red and I think it was the gray, and then like they had a lot of really cool jerseys, so I'm gonna have to also lean Expos on this one.
All right, so that's 2 votes for the Nationals / Expos. So I'm gonna be the one to get the Rockies on the board here. First of all, I like their normal home jerseys. I like the purple pinstripes with the black, the Rockies written out across the chest. But really, I'm a big fan of their purple alternate jerseys. I'm not sure if I know that they have a black alternate that they wear. I'm not sure if they wear the purple alternates anymore, but when they did, those were some really cool looking jerseys. So I'm going to have to get Colorado on the board. It is a 2-1 tally in favor of the Nationals / Expos. And we will move on to the third National League matchup. That is the Milwaukee Brewers and the St. Louis Cardinals, an NL Central showdown. And Borek, we'll start with you.
This is another decently close matchup for me, but because I always like everyone was talking about on the last podcast when I listened to it, the powdered blue uniforms, and I know the Cardinals do have a version of that, and red is my favorite color, so I would lean towards the Cardinals because the Brewers uniforms are cool for me, and I like their old school powdered blue, but other than that, their uniforms are not that impressive to me other than that one old school uniform I mentioned.
All right, and Sean?
I'm going with the Brewers in this one. As clean as the Cardinals uniform is and as nice as their powdered blues are. I just love the color scheme of the Brewers. As somebody that went to a blue and gold high school, and then for college, my colors are yellow and navy. The Brewers color scheme is just something I'm always drawn to. So it's got to edge out the Cardinals.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I like the Brewers. I like their old school uniforms. I also liked the ones that they wore up until the last couple of years. I think they actually switched it for this season, but the kind of navy blue and the gold, those are some pretty cool uniforms as well. And plus, I think the Cardinals uniforms are a little bit too plain Jane for me. They're a classic. They've remained relatively unchanged throughout the course of the years. I actually liked them better back when they wore the black hat as opposed to the red hat. But for now, I'm going to have to agree with you, Sean. I will go with the Brewers on this one. So it's a 2-1 tally in favor of Milwaukee. And now moving on to the Phillies matchup, and they're going against the LA Dodgers. Sean, we'll start with you.
In the first round, I picked the Mets over the Dodgers because I like their color scheme, and I got absolutely berated. And in this round, I'm going to go against the Dodgers again because the Phillies. I'm completely biased here. The Phillies uniform is nicer.
And Borek?
Yeah, it's the Phillies. I'm not going with the Dodgers. There's no chance I'm going with the Dodgers. It's the Phillies.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to make it a clean sweep, at least as far as the three of us go. A 3-0 tally in favor of the Phillies. And Sean, I would actually agree with you that I like the Mets jerseys better than the Dodgers as well. In fact, the Mets, despite the fact that they're a division rival, they're probably one of my favorite jerseys in baseball. I just love, orange is my favorite color. And I think orange and blue complement each other really well. So I hate the Mets as a team, but I've always been a fan of their jerseys.
I could not agree more. That's exactly how I thought. And don't let Shane hear you say that. But
For the Dodgers, I actually like the old school Brooklyn from Jackie's day more than currently. So if I was ranking the Dodgers, I would have to use that jersey to put them ahead of most people.
Oh man, I could certainly agree there. But anyway, as for us, a 3-0 Philly sweep over the Dodgers. If only they could sweep the Dodgers in actual baseball. But yeah, so looking pretty good for the Phillies to move on there. Of course, the 4 votes still needing to be counted, but if they don't even get one of those votes, the Phillies will be moving on. So we will be moving on to the American League side of this bracket, and the Yankees and the Twins. And Borek, who you got in this matchup?
Well, this one's hard to pick because the Yankees are obviously an all-time classic uniform, but I also detest the Yankees. So there's that. And I know a lot of people complimented the Twins uniforms in the last pod, and I agree with that. And they also have that new cool, I think they call it baby blue, not powder blue with them, but on the much more standout red. And I really like that. And I don't know if I'm leaning this because of my detest for the Yankees, other than select few like Gehrig and Jeter and some of the people in their history. But I would say Twins.
All right, and Sean?
This was hard for me. I really don't like the Twins color scheme or really their logo. I'm just never somebody that was drawn to that team and in general. Then again, I hate the Yankees, so this was hard for me, but I actually did pick the Yankees. I think they've kept it simple, and it's looked good for so long. It sucks that it had to be the Yankees.
Yeah, it's the most recognizable uniform in all of baseball, those Yankee pinstripes, and then even the gray jerseys with the blue letters and numbers. It's such a classic jersey, and honestly, I am a little bit biased because although I'm a diehard Phillies fan, I have a grandfather who is a lifelong Yankees fan, and I was a big Derek Jeter fan growing up. So I do kind of have a soft spot, and I know I'm going to catch shit from a lot of people. I do kind of have a soft spot for those Yankees, but I'm going to have to go with the Yankees in this matchup. So 2 votes for the Yankees, 1 vote for the Minnesota Twins. And moving on to the second matchup in the American League, we got the Tampa Bay Rays and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And Sean, who you got in this one?
So I'm taking the Rays. I really only picked the Angels last time because of how good it looked on Trout, plus the matchup I wasn't a big fan of. But I love the Rays. I love the Devil Rays uniforms too with, the green, I think it was the green sleeves they used to have. It's just every uniform they've ever had looks really good. Even the one they have now, the white with the rays with the star up on top, I really enjoy their uniforms.
And Borek?
I would say it's the Rays too. They have a better lineage of uniforms, even though I believe they're a much younger team. But I would say it's the Rays. The Angels are. I agree. I would have picked that in the first round based off that matchup, but just like Sean, it would have been based off of one person. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna have to agree with you guys. I'm gonna go with the Rays mostly because they're old, original Devil Rays uniforms. I love that multi-neon colored logo that they had.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I loved that logo. In fact, in Out of the Park Baseball, if you rename the team the Devil Rays, they bring that logo back, which is really cool. I wasn't a huge fan of the ones that, Sean, you mentioned, the green sleeves. I wasn't crazy about those, but I do like their current kind of navy blue logo that they have going on now. That's a pretty cool look for them. But I'm going Devil Rays, or Rays, I guess I should say now, mostly because of that old Devil Rays look. So it's going to be a clean sweep amongst us, 3 for the Tampa Bay Rays, none for the LA Angels. So we'll move on.
That was actually, though, so I was just going to say the Devil Rays were actually a fun story with me, though, as a young baseball fan. I think they switched over sometime in the mid-2000s, if I'm not mistaken, right?
It was, I think their last season as the Devil Rays was 2007, and then they became the Rays, and they went to the World Series and lost to the Phillies.
Exactly. But I was a youngster then still, and I really liked their jerseys, and I thought it was cool, the Devil Rays aspect, like you said, too, where I was kind of annoyed as a young kid. I was like, why would they get rid of the Devil Rays and go to the Rays? That's just, like, I probably didn't say stupid, but, now I would have thought that. I was like, this is just stupid. They changed the whole motto up for it. Like, that was the first thing in baseball that actually kind of annoyed me as a young baseball fan, other than in 2007 when we got swept, or not got swept, but did bad against the Rockies.
We did get swept.
We did get swept, yeah. So that's even worse. Yeah. But the Devil Rays, yeah, that just never made sense to me. That was the first thing that actually caught me off guard and annoyed me as a young baseball fan.
Yeah, it was such a cooler nickname than Rays. Anyway, moving on to this third matchup in the American League, we got the Athletics and the Mariners in an AL West matchup. Borek, we'll start with you this time.
I have to go with the Mariners because I literally have a plaque of Griffey in the uniform with the white and the cool Mariners with the yellow and the stitching of the letters and the gold yellow looking S jersey on my wall thing. So I have to the Mariners jersey. I just love that jersey from the Griffey era. So I have to go with the M's there.
And Sean?
That's a good point. I actually picked against both of these teams and got ripped apart by pretty much everybody. And even though, because I picked against the Mariners, Shane offered to buy me a Mariners jersey because he needed me to appreciate it more. But I do know that there's one uniform in baseball that he likes even better, and if I don't pick it, he'll rip me apart. So I will go with the Athletics here.
All right, and I'm going to have to agree with you, Sean. I'm going with the Athletics, mostly because I love those Kelly Green alternates they introduced last year. They're kind of a throwback to what they wore back in the early 1970s. And, yeah, the Kelly Green with the yellow or gold numbers and letters, I think that's a really good look. I'm not crazy about their regular home and away, but that alternate jersey is what does it for me. So that'll be 2 votes for the Oakland A's and 1 vote for Seattle. Going into our final matchup, which is between the Kansas City Royals and the Houston Astros. Sean, who you got in this one?
I'm taking the Astros, and I stuck up for them before, and I said, as much as, the team sucks, I love the Nolan Ryan era stripes, the multicolored stripes, where they had the orange and the white and the yellow, and I think there's some red in there. It just looked really, it popped. It looked really good, especially with Nolan Ryan wearing it. So, yeah, I'm going to have to go with them over my baby blue Royals.
All right, Borek?
I like those era of the Astros jerseys, which is why I mainly picked them. But because I don't remember who said it from listening to the last podcast, but somebody I think said, I don't know if it was you, Sean, but I know somebody said the Royals are like the best baby blue. They're basically what defined like that, something along those lines, where I just love their scheme with the powder blue, baby blue, and also they just mix in the blue on white, blue on gray. They just have a good color scheme. The darker blue with the KC I also like as well. So I would just go with the Royals there just because they have more jerseys I like, where the Astros are more just mainly focused on one.
Yeah, Borek, I'm going to have to agree with you. I just like the Royals look. It's a clean look. The Astros, the only jersey that I really liked in the Astros history that they wore was that red alternate that they had during like the Triple B, the Killer Bees, Bagwell, Biggio, Bell era, back when they first opened Minute Maid Park before they switched back to their color scheme that they have right now. I love the color orange. For some reason, I don't like the way that the Astros use it with their alternate jersey. I think it's a little bit, too bright of an orange. If they went with more of a burnt orange, then I'd probably appreciate it a little bit more. But aside from that red alternate that they had a few years ago, not really a huge fan of those jerseys. I'm going to have to go with the clean, crisp look, the home whites and the baby blues that the Kansas City Royals have. So that'll make it 2 votes for Kansas City, 1 vote for Houston, of course, with the rest of the votes pending coming in a later show sometime this week. You guys have any other thoughts on jerseys that you want to throw in?
Not really. We kind of touched on everything in the last episode. We touched on all of our favorite ones. Just that I would like Shane to know that I'm picking his Athletics this time if he listens to this.
Borek, you got anything else you want to throw in here?
Well, I would say for us, I don't know if you remember, I think we wore last year, the year before that, weird, I don't know, what do you guys think of the Phillies all maroon that almost looks like you're almost in a jumpsuit-esque when we wore that uniform?
I love it.
I thought that was kind of a cool factor, but at the same time, I was like, it just looks weird on television.
It only looked good on McCutcheon.
You know what?
It definitely looked good on McCutcheon.
For an unpopular opinion, I wish the Phillies would bring back those red top alternates that they had a few years ago. They didn't wear them often. I think they only wore them for like weekday day games or something like that. I just thought it was a nice look, but apparently it was really unpopular amongst the fan base, which is why they got rid of it.
Is it kind of like their spring training uniforms?
Yeah, it's the one that's almost exactly like the spring training uniforms, except it's kind of touched up a little bit to meet, I guess you would call it regular season standards.
Right. Yeah, I kind of remember that.
I think that's the only reason fans didn't like it that much, because they thought it was too similar to the spring, which is just stupid. Like, if you like the spring uniform, why not like that uniform?
Yeah, that is very true. You guys got any final thoughts for this episode before we wrap this one up?
I'm just ready for baseball, so I hope they run with one of these proposals.
I think I'm with you on that. I would love to see them go through with this Arizona and Florida League proposal. That would be, it wouldn't be as good as being able to go down to Citizens Bank Park and take in a game in person, but at least we'd be able to watch it on TV. Borek, you want to throw anything in here?
I just 100% agree with what you all said. I'm ready for baseball to get back. I hope the CDC and everybody and the governments of all these countries are able to come together and figure it out sooner rather than later. And I just want to tell everyone to stay positive, stay well, and just continue to keep listening to the podcast and giving us feedbacks and ideas, and stay busy. And remember, you can exercise solo still, so stay active when you can.
Certainly echoing all those sentiments as well. And I just want to give a shout out to the guys who bring in our show with their great music. The intro and the outro is what they give us. That is the Jackdaws. They're an excellent Celtic rock band. You can find them at www.thejackdaws.com. They're kind of suffering a little bit because of this quarantine. Obviously, they're not able to go out and perform their shows and their events, which is where they make the lion's share of their income. So if you guys could go show them some love on iTunes, give them a listen. They're also on Spotify. They're on SoundCloud, wherever you want to listen to your music. They've got some really excellent music. Personally, I'm a big fan of Celtic rock, so I've been listening to them a lot. But even if you're not, they have some really great songs that I think could draw your interest. So definitely give them a listen. I also want to give a shout out to Just Food. You can reach them by phone at 215-794-3663. That's 215-794-FOOD. They have a location in Buckingham at Buckingham Green. They also have a location at Delaware Valley College in New Britain, or Delaware Valley University, excuse me. It's been called that for a few years now. I don't know why I keep messing that up. But 2 excellent locations. They got such a great selection of food. If you want an event catered, they're the place to go. They have a vast variety of selections that, you have someone who's a vegetarian, they have vegetarian needs. They have pretty much everything you could ever want. And it's really, really high quality food. I've eaten there many times, never complained about anything. Their owner, Rob, a great guy. Once again, 215-794-FOOD. That is 215-794-3663. And before I wrap this up, once again, you can reach us on Twitter. We are at ANYP Phillies. You can find the Always Next to Your Podcast network at ANY Podcast. You can find me at radio_Rob. Sean, where can we find you?
At Sean New 27, SEANNEW 27.
And Borek?
At JJ Borek 26, and also for the other podcasts, Andrew and I are on at True_Philly Sport for any comments on DMs. That's the one I look at my DMs more.
There you go. And also, I am on the Disciples of Ed podcast talking Philadelphia Flyers hockey. We haven't put out an episode in a little bit of time because there, quite frankly, hasn't been a whole lot to talk about, but we will be getting an episode out soon. You can follow that on Twitter at Disciples of Ed. And also, if you're listening to the podcast, we would certainly appreciate reviews, especially if you're on iTunes or Google Podcasts. I believe those are the 2 places where you can leave reviews. Give us a rating, give us a review. We certainly do appreciate that. That's how we build our podcast and make it as good as it can possibly be. So help us help you. If you want the best show possible to listen to, then give us criticism, tell us what we can do better, and we will put our fullest effort forward to make that happen. And thank you for listening to this episode of the PTB&L, the podcast to be named later. As I've mentioned a few times, we'll be coming out with another episode in just a few days.
Man, I used to be revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son still had me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.